Welcome to Getting Sketchy Live, brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com. And now, let's get sketchy.
Hello there, everyone. Matt here with thevirtualinstructor.com, and welcome to Getting Sketchy Live, where either myself or my good friend and fellow artist and art teacher Ashley Hirsch tries to create a drawing for you inside of 45 minutes. Of course, this is all broadcast live. And of course, we try to sprinkle in a little bit of art instruction as well. Tonight, Ashley's going to be doing the drawing for us. This will be the fourth episode in this season, where we are working with two wheels. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just hang on just a little bit and you'll figure it all out. But basically, we spin two wheels, and those wheels tells us what material we're going to be using and what photo reference we're going to be using this season. And last week I spun for Ashley, and it landed on a Cockatiel, which was one of his references. And he's going to be using colored pencils to complete that in just a few minutes. But I'd like to remind you, if you're new to the channel, or if you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click on the notification bell so you're notified when we do Getting Sketchy, and also when I upload videos to this channel, of course. And if you want to take your drawing and painting skills to another level, there's a membership program over at thevirtualinstructor.com that includes a variety of drawing and painting courses on a variety of media and subject matter. I think I am in development of the 20th course right now as part of that program, and the courses are really in depth. There's a lot of instruction. Plus, we do weekly live lessons, and those lessons are broadcast to members and stored in our vault. And those lessons are longer and more in depth than Getting Sketchy. What we do here on Getting Sketchy, of course, is loose, but the live lessons are more in depth. We're creating complete and finished pieces of artwork with live lessons. There's also weekly critiques as part of the Members Minute and a year-long curriculum for visual arts teachers. All of that is included with the membership program. If you'd like to learn more about our membership program, there's a link in the description below. Everyone starts off with a week-long trial for free, so you can see if the program's right for you. And then beyond that, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you decide sometime in that period that it's not right for you, of course, you can always request a cancellation or refund, and I'll be glad to do that for you. If you want to just check out 3 of our course videos and ebooks for free, you can do that as well. There's a link in the description below for that. And hello to everyone all over the world here. I'm seeing morning from Japan, Australia, Queensland, Massachusetts, of course. I saw Western North Carolina earlier, Texas, Istanbul. You guys are joining us from all over the world. We really appreciate that because I know it is not 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time everywhere in the world. You guys are night owls or early birds, whatever you want to say you are.
Early cockatiels.
Yeah. What would you say? How would you do a cockatiel? What would you say? Punctual cockatiels. I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Anyway, Ashley's going to be doing the drawing tonight, and he's getting pumped up for that.
I'm ready. I can't wait. I'm studying our reference a little bit right now. I can see a lot of feathers in there, but it's really going to be an exercise, I think, in color and value more than texture.
All right. And just to kind of give you a little bit more information on what we're doing this season, this is, I think, is this the 9th season of Getting Sketchy? I think so. I think.
We need to go back and count because we always think we know. There could be a hidden season in there somewhere.
Well, there is a hidden season. There are a couple of seasons where it was just me by myself, of course, and I'm counting those as seasons. So there are little hidden seasons, if you will. But if you click on the live tab on the YouTube homepage here on my channel, then you can go back and see all of the Getting Sketchy episodes, of course. And then you can determine what season we're in. But anyway...
Man, I noticed you're in a new chair tonight. Looks like you're in a racing chair. I like that.
Well, this is the chair where I work from normally.
Okay.
Because, I'm answering phones, answering emails, doing stuff to the website all the time. And I decided to bring this chair over tonight because many of you know that I've had some complications from a surgery. And normally we've been sitting on a stool over here.
Right. A wooden flat slab of a stool.
Yeah, a wooden flat slab of a stool, but still I put my cushion on there, but now I have my cushion with my seat because I need to work on my posture or I'm never going to get better. But that's why I have the seat.
I thought it was a racing seat because we have to draw so fast to get our work done in 45 minutes.
Yeah, it is a racing inspired seat. Some of you also know that I'm into cars too. So
cool.
Anyway, I lost my train of thought. We are going to be working from a photo reference tonight. If you want to follow along with that reference, you can. If you go to the channel, the YouTube channel, again, just click on my little face down there in the corner. That will take you to the YouTube channel. If you click on the community tab, you'll see the photo reference that we're working from. But of course, we will have it up tonight during the broadcast as Ashley's doing the drawing right beside the drawing, so you'll be able to see the reference and make comparisons throughout the broadcast tonight. So anyway, if you want the reference, it's there for you in the community tab. If not, just kick back and get ready to watch things get really sketchy, because that's what we do around here.
Yeah, that's right, and the reference will take up half of your screen anyway, so it'll be pretty big on your screen if you just want to use it there.
Yeah. So again, you can head over to the community tab if you want, but if you do head over to the channel, make sure you subscribe. As I mentioned earlier, a new spaceship captain chair for Matt. Yeah, no, it's not new. It's just the first time you're seeing it, so it looks kind of new.
Engage.
Yeah. How are you feeling today, Matt? I'm feeling okay today. It's there's days. Some days are better than other days, but I'm getting a little bit better every day. It's not something anybody would want to happen to them. So it is a very slow recovery, and there's a lot of stretching, a lot of physical therapy that goes behind it, and definitely sitting on a flat stool doesn't help things. So I'm moving a lot during the day, and trying to keep my body loose and stretched.
Well, that's
out.
good.
Yeah.
We're really feels like we're made to move around constantly, slowly. That's what makes me feel good too. Too much movement, too vigorous, or too sedentary, I start to feel it.
Yeah. All right, I think we're ready to go. Are you ready to go?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Let's go ahead and switch over, and we'll start this drawing.
Now, before you get started, I know there was one thing I forgot to say.
All right.
And that is, there's a chat box, of course. And if you have a comment or question, if you put in all capital letters, which a couple of folks have already done, that'll help me see it a little bit easier since I'm manning the chat box tonight. A little bit better capital letters. Okay, so if you put your comment or question in all capital letters, that will help me see it a little bit easier. Remember, it doesn't have to be about what we're doing tonight. It could be anything art related. And we'll do our best to answer those questions for you. All righty, back over.
All right, well, we're going to start with just a pencil drawing. So I've got my my lead holder out and ready to go. But let's just take a look at the reference for a minute. Our bird is pretty central. We're going to start with some sort of basic shapes, some pretty smooth shapes, and then try to modify those shapes to have more of the particular contours of our parakeet before moving into colored pencil. The background is really smooth. It's a slow degradation from darker on the left to lighter on the right, and we may keep that pretty much the same. Maybe get a little bit darker at the top and lighter at the bottom. So it may change sort of the direction of the gradation. The bird is very gray. And I have some grays, but I want to get some color in there also. So I'm going to try to use little bits of blue and purple in our bird. And if you look at the forward wing, you can tell that it is a little bit cooler than the gray shadow that's above the bird. So there are warm and cool passages of gray in here. But like I said, we're going to try to get a little bit of color in there and maybe in some way unify the color of our bird with the mixture that we create in the background. It's very high contrast. The light is flooding in from the left, so in a lot of ways it shouldn't be too hard to create volume because the value changes so dramatically from left to right, and we're going to want to make sure that we show that. And one area that I'm not concerned about but want to pay attention to is the white feathers that are going to be on the forward wing, because they're white, they're obviously white, but they're in total shadow almost, and so we got to make sure that they still look white, but they also look like they're in shadow. So we'll see what we have to lay across those feathers to make that happen. There's a little bit of texture we can see, mostly where the shadow meets the light in the bird. We can see some more distinct feathers in the body. And if we've got time, we'll try to pull some of those marks out. But it is a 45-minute drawing, so we're going to start on focusing on our more basic elements of art. and texture is not one of those. So we're going to start with shape and sort of value. All right, so let's do it.
And a couple of people are asking. June says paper size, please.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Pat says what paper type, and also you might want to mention the colored pencils that you're using.
That's right. We're going to go through the colored pencil colors. So if you happen to be using Prismacolor, you can pick out some of the same. Hold on, I'm reaching for a ruler, just so I get this
means
right.
he doesn't know what size.
Yeah,
it is.
I know it's. Oh gosh. Can't remember if I used...
that is a tricky ruler.
There we are. I found the inches. I couldn't remember if I'd measured with inches or centimeters, but this one is 4 inches wide. 4 inches wide by, let's use this side. I believe it was 5.2 inches tall, or almost 5 1/4. Almost. All right, so 4 by almost 5 1/4. Pretty small, but not small for colored pencil, because colored pencil is a pretty tight medium. So let's take a look at those pencils. I tried to spin all the labels so that you guys can see them while we look at them. These are Prismacolor Premier pencils, and I've picked out, I think, about a dozen colors or so. So I've got 70% warm gray. I'm sorry, 70% warm gray, 20% cool gray, and 20% warm gray. 70% French gray, so I picked out all the grays pretty much to start with. French gray is kind of a brownish gray. Then we've got terracotta, peacock blue, magenta, crimson red, ultramarine, olive green. 50% cool gray. I thought I had missed that.
There's a lot of gray.
I need that one in there.
Yeah.
Let's see. This next one is yellow ochre. Blue cloud. That's the very first color we're going to use. I'll go ahead and tell you. Sand. The color of sand where I live is gray, but this is a yellow. And I'm talking about actual sand. And jade green. That's an important color for us in this artwork. Dark umber. Poppy red. Lime peel.
I really like lime peel.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's an important color. Lilac. And then I also have a colorless blender.
Now, did you know that when Shrek was auditioning for the movie Shrek, you know who was also close to getting that part?
I don't know who.
Yellow Ogre.
I can always tell when Matt's telling me a joke.
Not many people know that.
I knew it was coming.
Yellow Ogre came close.
Yeah. I love it. All right, so those are our colors, and you don't have to have... Let me bring them back. You don't have to have the same colors to have a successful drawing. We'll also try to describe these colors a little bit in terms of their intensity and value and even their temperature. Some of the temperatures are actually listed right on the pencils, cool or warm. So if we're using peacock blue, it's kind of a cooler blue than ultramarine. Then you could just find a cooler blue, even if it's from a different set. Or a different color in the same set. Just something close.
Now, if you do want to have those exact colors, I have linked to Prismacolor Premier pencils in the description below. That, of course, is an affiliate link, so it will take you to Amazon. And if you purchase from there, we do receive a commission because of or from that with no additional cost to you.
All right, man. I think it's time for the timer.
All right.
Sometimes I try to start early, but this time I thought I would be honest. Okay. Actually, I did start early. I put a dot right in the center of my paper just to find where that is. And now I'm using my pencil in front of my reference just to determine, I'm just kind of turning it horizontal or vertical in front of my reference to determine where the middle is. And it looks to me like the head of our cockatiel is just above the middle and to the left of the middle. So kind of using that dot as a reference point, I'm just going to start with a circle, just with a relatively... small circle, kind of thinking about the size of the circle, which represents a head right now, and the amount of space between that circle and the left edge of our picture plane. All right, now the body, I want to get the tilt of the body right, so I'm going to use my pencil. I'm going to tilt it until it appears to match to me, and then try to kind of transfer that down onto the page just to grab the tilt.
And while you're doing that, I'm just going to answer a couple questions. People are... The question is, what size is the lead? I do believe that's 2 millimeters.
Yes, and it's a 2B also. So
2B or not 2B?
Kind of dark.
That is the question.
But I'm using it.
So 2B obviously is it refers to the softness of the lead. And the paper that he's working on is 80-pound white sulfate
drawing paper. Yeah, sulfite drawing paper. And mine is slightly off-white, I guess. Slightly darker than white, but pretty close.
It's basically the same type of drawing paper that you would get in a pad, probably the 400 series.
Yeah, in fact,
paper.
it came out of a Strathmore pad, I believe.
So there you go.
That belongs to my son. I use his paper a lot for getting sketchy. All right, I went ahead and took a look at the empty space or the negative shape. It may be a little bit large right now, but I'm just trying to capture a little bit of the bird and the stick and their relationship together, and kind of figure out about where that stick's going to go through here. Or perch, I guess it's a perch. It's being used as a perch, something like that movement. All right, so we got our simple shapes. Let's go ahead and start bringing them together, and we'll try to find more particular contours of the bird and the perch at the same time. So we're going to marry this oval and this circle together with something like a neck.
And Jan says hello from Bergen, Norway. I hope I said that right. And Sandra says hello from West Virginia.
Super.
We're glad to have everybody, all of you guys from all over the place. It's pretty awesome.
Just trying to
now, do
figure
you
out.
think this cockatiel, do you think that he or she has hair gel in?
To keep that hair up?
Yeah.
I think they make their body makes a natural hair gel.
So you don't think that's studio gel?
No. I'm kidding. Okay. Now, the cockatoo, that's the big white bird, right?
I don't know.
With the yellow.
So far, not a bird expert.
What do you call a bird expert? What's the...
I don't know. But now I've got a riddle for you.
Okay.
Okay, so a rooster lays an egg at the apex of a roof.
Okay.
Which direction does the egg roll? North
Roosters don't lay eggs.
I've already said that one to you.
I think so. When you started it, I was like, I think I've heard this one
sounds familiar.
a number of times.
Yeah.
Probably all from you.
Now, right. Now,
it's kind of like where if a plane crashes on the border of Canada and America, where do you bury the survivors?
Right.
Same joke.
You have to say that everyone died first.
Oh. And
you left a crucial piece of information out. Yeah.
I thought you just say where do you bury the survivors, and
a plane crashed on the border and everyone died. Where do you bury? Oh, you don't bury survivors. That's
right.
it, right?
Yeah. I think I got it right.
You don't think you're right. I'm just slow.
All right, well, it's been going pretty fast. We're just working around those basic shapes and making some proportional adjustments along the way. So I decided my oval was a little bit too small, although I'm not sure if the back of our bird has quite such a bump in him. So I might modify that a little bit. But, the reason you start with basic shapes is because it's like a rough draft. And then when you try to put in a more accurate contour, it's a chance to refine what you've done in the rough draft in addition to putting those new lines in. So start simple, start easy.
Now, Rick points out that the lead you're using is dark and can mark the paper. Why not use an H pencil or lighter?
I could. I just had 2B lead in here, and I don't mind using it because I plan to lighten my drawing with a eraser. I think that was a tip that somebody had mentioned last week. This can be a good idea, and so there's no real reason that I'm using a darker lead right now, other than it was already in my lead holder. I know that sounds lazy, and I do have H pencils right here, so close to me.
I do have a lead pencil sharpener designed for that too, if you need it.
That's right.
Keith says, wouldn't the egg roll be at the Chinese restaurant? That's so great. That is so funny.
Which way does the egg roll?
Right.
Towards the Chinese restaurant.
Right. No, he said it would be at the Chinese restaurant.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say north, and then I realized those roosters don't lay eggs.
Yep.
Now, there are some small details in here. Little texture in the feet, that kind of thing. We probably will not include that kind of detail in our 45-minute sketch. and we're down to 38 minutes, so it's time to start laying down some color.
Just to go back to Rick's question about the heaviness of the lead.
Oh, yeah.
I think that this is a good example of how artists do things different ways. I typically draw very lightly with graphite if I'm going to be adding colored pencils. Sometimes I just go straight with colored pencils. And I'm sure Ashley's drawing is going to turn out just fine with starting with a softer graphite pencil. So, don't necessarily feel like there are certain things that you have to do. I get questions a lot about, mostly colored mediums, people asking, shouldn't we start lighter and then go darker, or shouldn't we start darker and then go
what's
lighter?
the right way?
Right. And there's not necessarily a right way. I mean, there's lots of different ways that you can approach things. And so this is just a different way.
Now, I will say this, and this may
darker lead.
This may be a little bit indirect. An indirect reason that I'm using, or typically use, a little bit darker lead sometimes is because I do draw on a camera for my students, and some of them have a hard time seeing very light lines. So I have gotten in the habit of drawing darker and then using an eraser just for their benefit, for their learning benefit, so they can see everything, instead of drawing as light as I probably could just for myself. So part of it is a habit, because I'm used to kind of drawing for other people, and they'll tell me. The students give me feedback when they can't see it, and it's oftentimes because of the camera, or the lighting in the room, things that I can't control as well in a classroom, as well as Matt is able to control those things here in the studio. All right, just finding those distinct areas in the head that are going to need their own color, like eyes or this patch of red-orange.
Okay, Paul, I think, has a question.
All right.
But there's no question mark at the end, so I'm going to read it like a question.
Okay.
Oil or chalk pastel on watercolor underpainting? So I think what he's asking is, can you put oil or chalk pastel on a watercolor underpainting? Can you use it watercolor underpainting for oil or a chalk pastel?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
And
I was thinking it was the other way around. I had my wires crossed, like chalk pastel and then watercolor on it.
Yeah, no.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, you could either or. You can put pretty much anything over the top of a watercolor underpainting.
All right, we're going to go ahead and lighten the drawing, and instead of rubbing it with the pink eraser, I'll use our kneaded eraser and just kind of press that extra graphite out of there so that it doesn't mix in and contribute to the colors that we end up with. A little paper fiber there. I don't know what's up with that. Okay, let's begin.
Paul said correct. So I'm maybe that was a test. Maybe that was a test question.
You passed the test.
The answer is C.
when in doubt. All right, I'm actually going to start with this blue color here in the lighter area of our bird's chest.
Marilyn asked, do you ever use a larger diameter lead clutch?
I don't. I've used the same one for years. I'm gonna lighten my pressure and take a little bit of this blue, this light cloud blue, kind of a sky blue, cerulean, maybe think of it as light cerulean, and just kind of faded it away in the middle of the bird, or near towards the middle of our bird, and then we'll be taking some grays and working our way in back that way. So there's a little transition between these colors. All right.
And just to go back to Martin's question about, I hope I said Martin. I hope I didn't say Marilyn. If I said Marilyn Martin, it's just because I'm so far away from the screen. The monitor here. And where we are, pretty much it's 2 millimeters. If you're using a lead holder, it would be difficult to find larger diameter of graphite. Brent Does Art says, I'm going to use green paper. I think that's a good call, Brent.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's, if I was assigned this drawing, I think I probably would work on green paper.
All right, so we've moved on to the 50% cool gray. Start working some of that in, not full pressure. Just kind of finding our shadows right now.
Paul asks, do you ever use Q-tips for a blending tool?
Some of my students do, but I don't. Maybe sometimes with charcoal.
Yeah, if you're using Q-tips and you're expecting to blend colored pencils, you're going to have to use some type of solvent with them, like terpenoid or something like that.
Which you can do. I'm just going to use the colorless blender
Or
tonight.
some people like to use Gamsol. You can also use baby oil. I like to use a colorless blender most of the time when I'm doing blending with colored pencils.
Just add additional wax in there. I mean, it's already waxy, so it's going to harmonize well.
Aurelio, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, says, can I use watercolor pencils? You can, but you got to understand that watercolor pencils are different from colored pencils. They're still pencils that have color, so it's easy to assume that they're the same, but watercolor pencils are actually meant to be activated with water. So the colored pencils that Ashley's using have a wax binder. There's also colored pencils that have an oil-based binder, and the oil and wax are very similar to each other. So a lot of times oil and wax colored pencils behave in a very similar manner. But watercolor pencils are, water soluble. So when you apply them to the surface, the intention or the assumption is that you're going to go back with some water and activate them and make those pencils look more like watercolor. So I think that this would be a great drawing to use watercolor, or this would be a great image to use watercolor pencils. But your image is probably going to look different than the one Ashley's creating because he's using traditional colored pencils. But definitely you can use watercolor pencils. If you use watercolor pencils, I would suggest working on a water absorbent paper like watercolor paper, so that when you apply the water, your paper doesn't wrinkle as much and can accept the water applications. And we've got a question: what brand of colored pencils? These are Prismacolor Premier pencils. These are wax-based pencils. They're the softest variety of colored pencils that Prismacolor makes. They also have a line called Very Thin, which are harder pencils.
And I like those too. I think I've used them on Getting Sketchy before. Very Thins. They hold their tip a little longer because they are hard and they're hexagon shaped, so they don't roll off the table.
Jan says, I'm impressed Ashley chose such a large paper for 45-minute colored pencil drawing. Not to put any pressure on you.
Well, I felt like the last time I chose paper that was too small for the polar bear. I was using pastel. So maybe I've made the opposite mistake. I've overcorrected. We'll see.
The question is, won't baby oil stain the paper? Well, maybe a little bit, but it's not going to necessarily destroy the paper if you're working on a paper that can handle it. Like I said, this is standard white sulfate drawing paper, so it's not water absorbent. It's not, and maybe water's the wrong term. It's not liquid absorbent, so it's probably going to wrinkle if you would apply baby oil or Gamsol or terpenoid to the surface. But some people like to work on heavier papers for colored pencil drawings, like Canson Mutants, pastel paper. There's a bunch of different surfaces out there that are suitable for working with colored pencils that are a little bit heavier papers that you can apply, liquids to the surface, and it won't be detrimental to the drawing.
All right, I had been working a lot with the 70% warm gray. I'm going to go ahead and switch to some other grays, where you're mostly working with grays early on, and then we'll add some other colors into them.
Okay, a couple more questions. Rick, I'm not really sure I understand this question, but I'll read it. Does the graphic affect the colored pencil in darkening it?
The graphite?
Yes, I think that's what he's asking. Does the graphite affect the colored pencil in darkening it?
Yeah, it can, which is why I tried to remove as much extra graphite as I was able to with a kneaded eraser before we started. Because, it'll mix right in.
Right, you'll definitely notice the graphite with the lighter colors, more so than you will with the darker colors. Keith says, does watercolor pencils cause less crinkling of the paper than watercolor paints?
Maybe a little, because you don't have to use as much water. You can really spread it out just in pencil form and then add enough water to activate it, but it'll still wrinkle your page.
Yeah, it really is determined by how much liquid you add to it. I mean, you can add a bunch of water to watercolor pencils. They're not really designed for that. They're really designed for kind of lighter applications of water. It doesn't take much to activate them, but you can apply a lot of water, but you can also apply watercolor paint with a little bit of water too. So, it depends. It depends on how much water you add to the surface. But the crinkling of the paper deals with how much moisture is there, not necessarily the actual pigment that you're applying to the surface, if that makes sense.
All right, I'm just going to start with the lighter yellow, what we call sand, up here in areas of the head, not too close to the left edge where it's more white. And then we'll add some colors over this one for the parts of our head that are in shadow. There's also some gray up here in the beak and around the eye. And we're just going to get a lot of colored pencil down and then spend some time sort of burnishing it out. Hopefully spend some time burnishing it out with the time that we'll have near the end with our colorless blender. A little bit of yellow into that patch of red-orange. Just keep looking at the reference. Just keep your eyes moving back up to the reference. All right, it's a good base layer for red-orange. Needs to get darker with some other colors. Maybe
Edie, I see your comments, and I would read it out loud, but I'm not going to. I think it's funny, though.
You have to tell me later.
Well, we got a little bit of a spammer on here.
Oh, okay.
Everybody's talking about how much they like it, hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul points out that it's why he likes watercolor paper, because it is a minimal issue with paper wrinkling. Yeah, and that's because that paper is water absorbent. Now, see, if let's say Ashley was using watercolor pencils, he would be, applying the material much like he's applying now, but then he would just stop and maybe take a brush loaded with water and activate that.
Instead of using a colorless blender.
Right, and then go back over the top of it with more colors.
Sure.
I did a live lesson series, it seems like not too long ago, but it was probably a lot longer than I think it was, where I drew a bird with watercolor pencils. And I really enjoyed that process.
Was that the bird that had like a toucan look to it? Did it have a large beak?
Yeah, I think so.
That was with watercolor pencils?
Yeah. It was a green bird with a red background.
I've got the 50% cool gray out right now. Just kind of working in the little bits of gray that are in our head and in our beak. Of course, there's a bright white highlight on the edge of this beak that we can't really get in there without a background, so that'll be part of what'll happen with the background.
All right, we got a question. It's not in capital letters, but I think it's maybe a topic of discussion.
Okay.
Why are art supplies so expensive? And I would say that there is a cost to doing anything. And the word expensive is relative to how much of yourself you kind of feel like you are involved in that particular activity. For example, there are lots of things that people do on a professional level that costs way more than art materials. And those folks have to invest in those things in order to do whatever it is that they do. So sometimes the cost of entry, I think we were talking the other day about that lawnmower. How much was that lawnmower?
$6,800.
Okay, $6,800 for a lawnmower.
And
Most of us would not spend that much on a lawnmower that we're going to use in our yard.
That's a cheap lawnmower in terms of like commercial lawnmowers.
Right.
It's the bottom of the barrel. They go up to $15,000-$16,000.
So that
for a lawnmower.
Right. So that is a cheap commercial grade lawnmower, $6,800, where most of us would probably spend, I don't know, $300 or $400 on a lawnmower that we would use at our house. Mm-hmm. That's because we're not doing it professionally, right? But if you did want to be a professional landscaper, you would have to invest in equipment that most of us would determined to be expensive. Now, if you're wanting to create art on a professional level, then you probably are going to need to invest in some materials and art supplies that some people might consider to be expensive, but they're really, relatively speaking, not that expensive. It just depends on what your level of commitment in making art is. So a lot of people view making art, I'm sure a lot of people watching this video, it's a fun hobby for them, and it's something they like to do with their spare time. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There are probably people watching this too that have aspirations of being a professional artist. If you're wanting to be a professional artist, then investing in your passions, I think, is important. So when you're learning, it's okay to spend less money on supplies, for sure. But when you're ready to get serious, having quality supplies makes a big difference. It really does. We can't create a professional looking colored pencil drawing with Crayola colored pencils. I know that there are lots of YouTube videos out there showing you how you can create a drawing with really cheap supplies, but you got to understand that a lot of the people who are making those videos like that are highly skilled drawers or artists, and it can be misleading because Crayola colored pencils, for example,
it's just harder to use those.
Crayola colored pencils, for example, are they don't behave the same way as the Prismacolor Premier pencils, and you're not going to be able to get them to behave in the same way as well. So
that's part of the reason. And then also, pigment costs more than dyes just to mine. So some of the materials are a little bit harder to acquire to make our colors, whether they're paint or in colored pencils.
Okay, John says, are you trying to keep your pencil strokes going in a certain direction?
I've thought about that a few times, as far as like the direction I see feathers going, but not too much. Not consistently. I haven't been doing that consistently. Just been trying to put the value down. I've changed directions occasionally when starting another layer of a different color over a first color, just to make sure I'm picking up all the tooth of the page. So I've changed some directions just for coverage purposes. Still working on some base colors here. I did go ahead and put a little bit of blue in our bird. We're going to modify his colors a little bit just to make them a little bit more colorful or interesting. Color sells. Artists love black and white artwork, but buying public, they really like color.
Swirly Squirrel asks, what type or what kind of sharpener do you use?
A lot of times I will use an X-Acto knife, but tonight I used just the top of one of Matt's old sharpeners. There's not even a bottom on it.
You're exposing me.
Yeah, I sharpened it right into his drawer.
Can you even pull out my pencil sharpener or my
This is where the pencil shavings go.
That gives you some insight on how I sharpen my pencils.
We've got a sand pad,
two sand pads,
right, just to make the pencils even sharper, and then just like broken remnants or pieces of sharpeners. It's like a gravy.
They're not broken.
They're not broken. They're just disconnected from their bodies.
The long plastic one with the four openings. That's for making a very long pointed pencil.
Go. That's how that one's supposed to look.
Those are long pencil sharpeners.
I don't know where the bottom of that one's at. So we'll sharpen our pencils almost anyway. But Matt does have some. You've got a video on how to sharpen your pencils, right?
Yep.
And it goes over maybe using those sandpaper pads and some of those other
It
tricks.
goes over every possible way you can sharpen a pencil. Yeah. And what what ways you should sharpen a pencil depending on the type of pencil it is. So just look for that on YouTube. Then it's a free video.
All right, super.
How to sharpen any pencil, I think, is the name of the video there.
My pencils were so organized when I started, and I would use one and then put it back, and now it's just mayhem over here.
Brent says, anyone tried water-soluble crayons? They're great for landscapes. And yeah, I think I've got some Caran Dash, what are they called? They're water-soluble. They're basically water-soluble crayons. They have a specific name, but I've got some over there behind Ashley. I've used them a couple of times. I've really used them in conjunction with colored pencils. So I laid down a little bit of those water-soluble crayons and then applied colored pencils over the top after activating them. Margie says, if money were no object, would you buy pastel matte paper over Canson Mi-Teintes for pan pastels? It depends, because I don't make decisions artistically based on how much something costs. And I actually have that luxury because for me, art is a job. So any purchase that I make, I eventually get to write that off at the end of the year, tax deductions. If you're selling your art, of course, I'm not a tax professional, but I would assume that you probably could do the same thing. If you're not selling your art and you're not, or maybe you're selling your art, not reporting that income, then you probably can't do that, of course. But if you're not selling your art, I don't think you can do that. But there are situations when I want the look of pastel matte paper, and there are situations where I want the look that the Mi-Teintes paper provides, because they're not the same type of paper and they don't produce the same results. The Mi-Teintes paper produces, it's got more of a pronounced tooth, and as a result, the finished images have a little bit more of a broken line, a rougher look. If you will. You can still get smoother transitions, but it's definitely more of a pastel-y look, I guess, where the pastel matte paper provides smoother transitions of tone and value. It's a little bit more of a refined paper, so it's easier to get details. But no, I choose the paper based on how I want the finished look to look like, or sometimes depending on the material that I use. If I'm using pastel pencils, I might be more likely to use pastel matte paper because that typically lends itself to a more controlled drawing. But pastel matte paper is very expensive. You point out something there that the Mi-Teintes paper is definitely cheaper, and the pastel matte paper is definitely expensive. And the thing about the pastel matte paper is I have to order it online, and it takes forever to get here. So I have to make sure that I have pastel matte paper on hand if I'm ever going to use it.
Because it is expensive, I guess a lot of art stores won't carry it. It's just not
I just don't think the demand is as high. I don't think that there's a lot of people going into the big box art stores asking for pastel matte paper, because a lot of those people probably don't even know it exists. I think
they need to tune in to virtualinstructor.com.
Yeah, I guess.
And see what's out there.
All right. The chat box is going really quick.
I have been just trying to get a base layer on this background as quickly as I can. We're going to mix into it because it needs to become cooler and darker and duller. We've almost touched all of the paper now, save for the bird's feet and his plume, whatever that might be called. Using the magenta, I'm just going to hit a little bit of the feet where they're mostly in shadow. Kind of, I don't know if you can hear my pencils clanking over here. I thought I had lost the gray. Go ahead.
Him is asking, what blue did you use on the body?
In the bird, I used peacock blue, which it makes sense because it's a peacock. It's another bird, so it doesn't really make sense. But I did throw a little bit of peacock blue in there just to dress up some of those grays, and I think I'm going to use the peacock blue in the background a little bit also.
Okay, Melody, real quick, ask Matt and Ashley, did you dress up for Halloween? I was Michael Myers, as I always am, and I go around and terrorize the neighborhood. Did you dress up, Ashley?
No, I didn't.
And
I did. I passed out candy at my house this year instead of walking around the neighborhood. If I were to have walked around the neighborhood, I would have definitely dressed up, or at least painted my face, because we always have face paint at our house. And usually that's how I dress up. I just paint my face in some way. Last year I painted a star. I ruined one of my eyes, so I look like a 1970s rock star, Kiss style. But this year I didn't paint at all. My son dressed up as a knight, and my daughter wasn't going to dress up at all, and then got into the face paint. Ended up painting her face as well.
Enrique asked, how could these pencils be blended to get other colors?
Oh, yeah. That's kind of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, that's what you're seeing happen right
I'm
now.
layering them so that I'm getting colors that are different from either of the two pencils that I've started with. It's going to be kind of a blue-green right now. I've got a pretty cool green, blue. I had a warm green, so they should actually dull each other out a little bit. And we'll throw a third color in here also, or in places. And then I know we've got 12 minutes left. I feel pretty good about that, but at some point it's going to start to feel like there's not enough time because we've got to get back into the bird and burnish, which means the entire surface, well, maybe the entire surface, needs to be hit with our colorless blender, but not necessarily all to the same degree.
Okay, Keith says, amazing the way putting the green background suddenly brought out the color of the bird.
Yeah, the bird really, the light of the bird wasn't working at all on the white background. We had to make the background darker than the light on our bird, but you'll notice, to the photographer's credit, the background is also lighter than the dark side of the bird. It's really the midtone that helps the bird stand out all the way around. So if you're making up a background, just throw in some color or value behind a subject. That's a good way to think. Stay lighter than the darks and darker than the lights. I think that's a good place to start as a rule, if you like following rules.
Ann says, burnishing scares me. That means no more color can go down on the paper. Well, that's not necessarily true.
Right. We can get a little more down.
Yeah.
And we can also, like I mentioned before, or briefly mentioned, we can burnish to varying degrees. So we don't have to entirely seal it under a layer of clear wax.
Brent Does Art says, burnishing is my least favorite part.
And some of my students don't burnish at all. They kind of like that speckly look. So I think I'm going to start burnishing with the bird when we get there, and then consider how much to do in the background.
I burnish like nobody's business.
Yeah, you do.
And that is my favorite part, actually.
Yeah, I know. It just makes it look so resolute and solid, and it deepens your values. It's just something I've got to remember. The values will get a little bit darker.
Edie says, have you guys ever done a painting on black velvet?
I can't believe you just said that. I believe in synchronicity, when things happen kind of close together. And I haven't thought about black velvet paintings in years. And I brought up black velvet Elvis paintings in class just like yesterday or Monday. And now here it's come up again. I've never done a painting on black velvet.
I haven't either. I don't see that happening in my future either.
We do like black surfaces here at virtualinstructor.com. We use those pretty often, or at least toned surfaces. All right, so I've got the dark umber. I'm putting a little dark umber, which is a brown. It's kind of a dull brown, up here in the top left corner, and kind of working my way across and down. Very, very light pressure, just enough pressure to see some of those brown speckles kind of appear into the mixture. And we are getting an optical mixture up here, even without burnishing. We can see the color change.
Enrique says, is there a market for art with colored pencils? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. And illustrators, they'll use colored pencils a lot.
Yeah, there are also portrait artists who work with colored pencils. There's definitely a market for any type of art with any medium that you want to create. You just want to make sure you're creating quality artwork that people are attracted to, and that's where the market is. I
think that when materials are brand new on the market, sometimes the market doesn't adopt them immediately. And I'm thinking of Watercolor. At one time, watercolor, I mean, it's been around for a really long time, since the ancient times. But there was a period where watercolor was sort of thought of as a sort of an outdoor capture your colors medium before you go back into the studio and make a real painting out of oil paint. But gradually the attitude changed towards watercolor, and there are a lot of artists like Winslow Homer and Andrew Wyeth. Those two come to mind as being highly successful watercolor artists, in addition to other media. So maybe colored pencils at one time wouldn't have been thought of as a finishing medium, but they sure are now. They've stood the test of time. I think oil pastel falls into that category right now. Oh. All right, 8 minutes left, and just kind of skipping around. Didn't get any of this magenta on the foot to our right. So we'll get a little bit of that in there, and maybe some gray over top of it just to tone it down some. A gray, any gray, pick your favorite gray. I'm using peacock blue, so you can pick a blue too.
Okay, we got a question. What is the difference between colored pencils and pastel pencils? There's a huge difference, and instead of going into all the details of why they're different, first of all, pastel pencils have pastel material in them, and colored pencils have a wax-based or oil-based binder that carries the pigment. They behave differently, extremely differently. I have a video that explains the difference between all the different pencils out there that are colored, that a lot of people like to kind of put together as colored pencils. But colored pencils is really just either oil-based or wax-based colored pencils. There's also there's watercolor pencils, there's pastel pencils, there's ink tints pencils, there's water-soluble graphite pencils. There are colored graphite pencils that are also water-soluble. There are a ton of different types of pencils out there that it's easy for people to assume that all those pencils are similar, but there really are huge differences between those. So you can look for that video on the channel. I think it's, let's see, if you just go to the channel and scroll through or look under the colored pencils, you'll find it. Or you better yet, go to the website and look under the colored pencil section. You'll be able to find that there.
I've had a blowout over here.
Oh no!
My lead broke.
All right.
All right. So my colorless pencil lead immediately broke, and went to sharpen it with the awesome sharpener I showed you earlier. It broke again. So I started looking around, trying to find an X-Acto knife, and I had to break out my pocket knife. So you can even sharpen your...
What is that?
Right, you can even sharpen your pencils with one of these. So
how'd you get past security with that?
It was a gift from my brother. I keep it in my car. It's like a first responder's knife. No. It has a seatbelt cutter and a window breaker. It's for an emergency in your car. Okay. Right. It's actually in case you plunge into a lake, you can use it to escape. At least that's the idea. So I know it looks pretty dangerous. It's pretty dangerous. All right.
Ann asked, can you get a good burnish with a stump? Not really. That's really just going to be pushing down the tooth of the paper. Colored pencils require something a little bit heavier, like a colorless blender. A colorless blender is basically the wax binder, just it doesn't have any pigment in it. So it moves the color around, allows for some blending and mixing, or by using a solvent, as I mentioned before. But with those blending stumps are really best for like charcoal or graphite. That's really what they're more designed to be used with. Paul says, ever step into the pouring paint world? Do you ever step into that world?
We actually made a pendulum at school with a bottle upside down with a hole poked in it,
Yeah.
And we could swing the pendulum across like big floor cloths, and it would move around and paint patterns. We've done that, and we've also used our ceramic wheels and gotten a canvas going in a circle on there.
Yeah.
And then you can drop paint onto there, different amounts, change the speed of the wheel, and in some way kind of control your composition that way. So I don't know if that's the same as pouring paint, but that's so different ways we've experimented with getting paint onto a surface. All right. I'm thinking. I might use a little bit of French gray in here.
Paul is asking, which colorless blender do you use?
Usually I use a colorless blender, also made by Prismacolor. But tonight I have this, how do you say that, Matt?
Kohinoor.
Mm-hmm. Kohinoor, yeah, that's it. And it's pretty much, it feels like it's pretty much the same kind of filament inside, yeah.
Yeah, I use the Prismacolor.
Now this tree branch, how many minutes we got? 3 minutes? Oh my gosh. This tree branch is mostly just a flat color, and I plan to put a lighter color over it after it's burnished. So we're going to do that just so it doesn't feel too flat. There are some slightly lighter areas lower on this tree branch, so I'm just going to use one of our lighter grays and add a little bit of variety to the value in there, just a little bit, just so it's not entirely flat. All right.
Buddy says, Matt, I'm facing technical problems. Did my mail come through? I'm not sure, buddy. I haven't received anything.
I did, and Buddy, I have a response for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I understand. Okay,
sorry,
I remember.
So long.
Buddy, I received your email and I forwarded it to Ashley.
Yes. And then I saw it a couple days after that, and I've been thinking about it and have a response for you. So your mail is working just fine. And thank you.
All right. Martin asked, do you have experience using acrylic pastel ground on untraditional surfaces? To be honest with you, Martin, I don't know what acrylic pastel ground is.
Acrylic pastel, is that
because
like
acrylic is
that to create a surface that's sort of like a pastel matte paper, like an acrylic
I don't know.
surface?
It says on untraditional surfaces. Acrylic is a plastic, and pastel is typically delivered using a gum-based binder. So
yeah,
those seem like different things, but there are new things coming out in the art world every day that seem contradictory to me, like water mixable oil paints.
Right, and that's like 30 years ago, and we're still getting used to it.
So I'm not sure. I just don't know. I'm not familiar with that medium. Enrique says, great drawing.
Well, thank you. You can really see how much darker the background becomes after we start to burnish in there.
We got a question: are acrylics the same as oils? No, they are drastically different from each other. Acrylics are water-based. Acrylics, like I mentioned before, have a plastic binder. So when they dry, they're like plastic. They can also be used as glue. Oils obviously have an oil binder. So they dry very slowly, and you just can remember that oil and water don't mix, so you can't use acrylics and oils together in the same painting unless you create an acrylic painting and let it dry completely, and then you can put oils over the top, but you can't do the reverse of that.
Right, that's key. I mean, gesso, which is the white paint that comes on prepared canvases, is acrylic. So we're almost always putting oil paint over some sort of acrylic because we use it for a primer, but definitely can't go the other way.
D-Best says, will you be using mineral spirits? Can still see the tooth of the paper?
No, not tonight.
This is a quick sketch, right.
and we've reached the end.
And it's kind of a big
but I'm gonna
drawing.
It's fair size, I guess, for this venue. And we're going to go over a little bit. I'm reclaiming my time from when my lead broke and I had to sharpen my pencil again.
Okay, so. Paul asked, if I spin or alter a Pixabay pic and make it mine to sell, or is that still not legally mine? Paul, I can't answer that question. I'm not a lawyer, and I can't give you advice on that. But that seems to me like I don't know if I would do that.
Wait a minute. Use a Pixabay picture to make an image to sell.
Yeah, I think he's altering a photograph, maybe.
From Pixabay?
Yeah.
Is it a copyright-free image, or was it purchased from one of the purchased?
I don't know. I don't feel real comfortable.
Well, we draw from Pixabay images.
Well, that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about altering an image. I think he said if I spin or alter a picture. I think it's fine for you to spin or alter a Pixabay pic and then put it on Pixabay, maybe. I mean, I can't give you any advice there. I can't give you any legal advice because I don't know. I don't know if you can or not.
Okay. Well, I know time is up. I pretty much got everything in here that I wanted to in the amount of time that we have. We really pretty much ignored texture and tried to let the lights kind of happen when we got to the application of the background. Got a lot of colors in our bird. Even though he's a gray bird, we put blue in there. I actually put a little bit of a red over that, so we can definitely see the colors. But hopefully, there's enough of them that they cancel each other out optically and don't seem too intense.
Yeah, Torch makes a good Torch Singer. I like that name there. Says even copyright-free images have some restrictions on use, and that's very true. You can't.
Now, what you can always do is just contact the photographer. You know, their information is attached to their photographs on Pixabay, and you might be able to just reach out and talk about what you want to do and get permission via email, and that's written. And then you have the flexibility. Yeah,
Pat gave that advice there, and in case of doubt, ask for permission from the author. Brenda says, do you guys ever finish these pieces later, or are they done when this hour is over?
No, I never go back to mine and continue to work them up.
Yeah, me either.
I save that for the live lessons at the Virtual Instructor, which will be starting, in about 30 minutes, Matt?
Yeah, about that.
Something like that. 29
minutes to be exact.
All right.
And Ashley will be finishing up his wonderful charcoal drawing tonight.
Yeah. I'm anxious to finish it. I'm anxious to see it finished, actually.
And next week, I will start a brand new series on oil pastels next week.
I've just been putting as much wax down as I can in the background. I had originally used vertical strokes, and I just wanted to hit it with some horizontal strokes. Also, kind of gives it this almost like a fabric pattern to it. All right, but otherwise, I think this sketch is complete.
All right, very good.
And you know what time it is?
It's time to spin the wheel.
It's time to spin the wheel. That's
right. Ashley's going to spin 2 wheels and to find out which photo reference I'm going to be doing and which medium I'm going to be working with next week. But while he's getting that all set up, I should tell you can just zoom out if you want.
There we are.
And I'll hide this bird here and the timer.
So we've got our wheels. There we go.
All right, there's the bird. All right, I should tell you that next week, Getting Sketchy in our live lesson is going to be on Tuesday evening instead of Wednesday. I'll remind you again of that as we wrap things up. But next Wednesday, I will be leaving town, and we'll do the live lesson and Getting Sketchy on Tuesday instead of Wednesday. All right. If you want a reminder of that,
it'll be fun to mix it up.
Yeah, if you're subscribed to the channel, you should get a notification of that. So let's see here. So we've got the references on the right, and we've got the materials in
the middle.
In the middle.
I've moved them now.
We'll start with the materials.
That's right. All right. So we can use these materials as many times as we want. We're not marking off materials after we use them this season like we did last season. So Matt drew in ink last time and pastel before that, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Ink, watercolor. Mm-hmm. So let's see what you get now.
It's still watercolor markers.
That's right. Watercolor markers.
Technically watercolor.
There's watercolor.
Oh, that's a good spin right there. Yes. That is really rolling.
That. Ooh, charcoal, one of my favorites. All right.
All right.
Very good. Well, you might get the chain. I think it would be good for charcoal.
Yeah, there's a couple that would be good for charcoal. There's a couple that would not be good for charcoal.
That's true, and that's the risk. That's the risk that we're taking this season, and it is a little risky.
Yeah.
Usually we choose a media that fits well with the subject, and this season we just have to go for it.
Yep.
So if it lands on the fly, hey, look, these are all in order. The ones that we've the fly, the cockatiel, the polar bear, or the poppy, we will spin again. Otherwise, everything else is up for grabs.
All right.
Here we go. All right.
Another good spin there.
Yeah. 95 cents. Yes.
Oh, it is the chain.
I'm happy for you.
Works out there.
I'm happy for you. I wanted the chain with charcoal, but I'm glad. I think it's a media that'll be suitable for the subject.
And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I'm going to be working on black paper, I think.
All right. Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
I think I'll work with black paper and white charcoal.
I think we need to bring the timer down to about 30 minutes for next week. If you're using black paper and white charcoal.
No, I don't think so. They'll give me a lot of time to develop the details.
That's right. And I know there are those in our audience.
And that is another one of your images. So
yeah, that's right.
So far we have done one of my images.
Do we want to switch the cameras over?
Two of my images. So, all right. So we'll be here for Getting Sketchy next week. And of course, there's always that person that calls when we're live every week. I'm not really sure why they do that.
You're out there in the chat. You just want to hear the phone ring.
I don't know if that's what's happening or not, but
coincidence.
Anyway, next week, as I said, we're going to have Getting Sketchy on Tuesday evening, and the live lesson will follow on Tuesday evening. If something changes with that, if you're on our newsletter, I'll let you know. I'll let everyone know that the live lesson is going to be rescheduled to next Tuesday as well. And if you're if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, of course you'll get a notification when we go live, like probably many of you got tonight as well. And maybe some of you guys who can't make it normally on Wednesday night will be able to make it on Tuesday night next week. Well,
if they can't make it on Wednesday, they're probably not here now, but they'll be here next Tuesday.
Right. Well, a lot of people watch the recorded version.
Yeah.
They go back and watch the video.
Yeah, definitely.
So if I'm talking to those folks,
in the future,
I know a lot of people go to church on Wednesday night.
That's true.
Anyway, thanks for joining us all tonight. Thanks to everyone in the chat box. I tried to get to all the comments with capital letters, but I know I didn't tonight. There were a lot of those that we just didn't have time for, and I just missed there. So thanks for joining us. We're ready to get set up here for our live lesson, which follows. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell, and have a wonderful week, guys. And the people that you love in your life are important to you, and I know that you already know that, but make sure that they know how important they are to you. So make it a point tomorrow to tell those people that you love that you actually love them. Ashley, you have any following?
I think I'm going to take your guys' advice and start drawing my colored pencil drawings only about 3 inches tall. We're going to limit to 3 inches from now on. So thanks for the tips. Have a good week.
Yeah, I think I would have done on green paper and kept it a lot smaller, but your drawing turned out
I got a lot of strokes in there. I wish I had a stroke counter on my wrist. I think I hit 10,000.
Especially there at the end.
In the background, it was crazy.
All right, guys, have a wonderful week. With that, we're going to go ahead and sign out for this evening. Good night, everybody.